Hey guys, what is up? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven. I am your host. And joining me today is a very special guest. You see him on Twitter, of course, former scout for the Chargers, current scout for the Draft Network, Mr. Brentley Weissman. Brentley, thanks for taking the time to join me today. How are you doing?
Doing well, Stephen. Appreciate you asking me to come on. Always a pleasure. It's been a while. Definitely need to come on more. But I'm excited to talk ball with you, specifically some Charger ball. And yeah, man, things are good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the previous season we had you on during the season because the Chargers season was just miserable. So, we pivoted towards the draft a little earlier last year than this year. So, obviously, the Chargers season did not end the right way, but the draft season is getting kicked off a little bit earlier this year. So, really excited to talk about Brentley today, get some of his thoughts on some fits for the Chargers players. We'll ask him about players from Oregon as well as the resident Oregon guy, maybe potential reunion in the works with some of Justin Herbert's former teammates. And then Brentley was able to attend the Shrine Bowl in Las Vegas this year. So we'll get some standouts from the Shrine Bowl as well. We'll start with the Oregon standouts, if you will. I know there's a decent amount of day three buzz for CJ Virdell, the former running back that Justin Herbert played alongside with. What are your thoughts there with CJ and then any other potential Oregon draft picks this year?
Yeah, man. CJ is a guy who I was hoping would actually return to school, as you
Okay.
mentioned, as an Oregon alumni, but that's selfishly. So I think obviously he was definitely ready to go to the NFL into the next level. He's a guy that before his injury this season was on his way to a potential kind of Doak Walker, caliber season. I mean, he was sensational earlier in the year, obviously with the highlight being at Ohio State where he had almost 200 yards rushing and like 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, he was amazing, and so he's a compact, really physical downhill runner. Explosive down the field speed. I think that's a really underrated part of his game. When he opens up his stride and at the second level, he's pulling away. Good vision. He's not a guy who's going to make a lot of people miss laterally,
Okay.
like a Justin Jackson, for a guy I know you're familiar with, who really shifty, has loose hips that can make guys miss in the open field. That's not Virdell. Virdell is a guy who, if he sees a hole, he can hit it and hit it with some juice, and all he needs is a gap, and he's gone. So I think for the Chargers, if they decide to kind of take another swing later in the round to find that true back that can be the complement to Eckler, because I can tell you, he is not on the roster still. I know they tried with Roundtree,
No.
they tried with Kelly 2 years ago, and then they still have Justin Jackson, I think, is a free agent. He is not on the roster, and so I definitely think running back will be a place the Chargers look to improve on. And Virdell, somewhere in the sixth, maybe seventh round, is a steal in my opinion, because I think if he didn't get hurt, he's not lasting that long.
Yeah, no, he's somebody that I'm really interested in because I think the Chargers do need that home run kind of threat. I think that there are some running backs that could fit that kind of mold in free agency if they want to go that route as well. But they need competition desperately at this position. I think you look at, we're all thinking of like the Rams and the Bengals right now, of course, and like the Rams. They saw a need and they went out and got Sony Michel, and they're probably not playing in the Super Bowl without Sony Michel. I know he didn't have a huge role in the playoffs, but he was able to kind of carry that room. And if anything happens to Austin Eckler like it did in 2020,
It's a
the
wrap.
Chargers just don't have anybody back there. So I'm in favor of doing whatever it takes to bring competition. I don't really see a fit for Roundtree or Kelly at this point. I think Roundtree maybe as a practice squad guy who can come in and be, special teams depth, but this running back room needs a lot of love, in my opinion.
No, man, I completely agree. I mean, bring back Melvin. I mean, Denver's gonna let him walk, so bring back Melvin because he's still good when he's healthy. I don't
Yeah.
think he'll be asking for you know a huge amount of money like he was when it was whatever 2 years ago when he was entering free agency. So I mean, just kind of kidding on that front, but I mean, they definitely do need to get a running back. I mean, I love Eckler, love everything he brings to the table. Obviously, he's really valued by the team in the front office, but I don't think he's best used as a feature back. Now he's proved he can do it. I just don't think for the Chargers offense to really take that next step, I do believe they need a back who can complement Eckler and who can allow Eckler to do some of the things that he was doing in his rookie season, in his sophomore season, where you saw the Chargers do a lot of two-back sets, 21 pony, where you have Eckler split out wide on a linebacker, and it's a complete mismatch, while you still have Melvin Gordon or a back like that in the backfield. Like that, those are the types of things that Eckler can still do that defenses, that's the stuff of nightmares, right? How do you game plan for Eckler being on a linebacker in the slot or split out wide, and then you still have to account for a real threat in the backfield,
Right.
And so I personally think getting another running back that can actually contribute and not just be a generic backup, which is what Kelly, Roundtree, and Jackson are, is
Yeah.
highly important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that, from Joe Lombardi's days with the Saints, like that 21 pony is a staple, right? Whether it was
Yeah.
Reggie Bush or Alvin Kamara or now Austin Eckler, like they've always tried to have like two legitimate backs. So I'm curious to see really how they go about doing that. So the other Oregon player I really wanted to ask you about is defensive back Ron Mckinley. He reportedly has met with the Chargers twice. He was a late add to the Senior Bowl. Really, I felt like he should have been there from day one. What are your thoughts about McKinley's draft stock and how you could potentially see him fitting in with the Chargers?
Yeah, honestly, like the fact that he wasn't initially invited but yet was eligible, I was highly
Yeah,
confused because, like, if he's eligible for the Senior Bowl, why the hell wasn't he at least at the Shrine Bowl? Like, so many
right.
questions, but I have like an early three on him. His game is really instincts in both phases. I mean, I think he led the country in picks last year, and it's not
Yeah,
because he has crazy range or because he's running a 4.40 and he can go red line to red line. It's because his instincts are outstanding. I mean, up there with Javon Holland, who was arguably a top 3 defensive rookie of the year candidate last year with Miami Dolphins. And so those are the types of instincts he has. I think he's best suited as a free safety in like a cover 3 scheme. Can do some split safety stuff. Can also play some nickel. I think he's a highly versatile player. The issues with Ron McKinley is he's just not fast. He's
okay,
probably a high 4.5 guy. He's not someone you feel great about. Being man on man. Having speed at 3. He's not that kind of guy who can really flip his hips and carry vertically. Like it's not his game. But for the Chargers, who could really use that kind of third safety,
yeah,
shoot, maybe even a second safety, like McKinley could fit in nicely, and then honestly, having a versatile defender, you could always have room for. Again, I think he could play some nickel. I think he can play down in the box, similar to kind of how Adrian Phillips was used back in 18. I think there's some of the things he can do because he's an outstanding tackler. Can beat blocks, can shed blocks. Just really good instincts in the run game as well. So I think he's a guy I feel really good about in the third round. I know some people have him a little lower, but you just don't luck into that kind of ball production.
right.
You just don't. And people have the same kind of questions about Holland. And I know I'm the resident Oregon kind of homer at TDN, but I mean, I was also the resident Oregon homer at the Chargers. When
Right.
Herbert was a sophomore, people called me crazy, but I do think McKinley is a guy who he might lack the speed, might lack the raw athleticism, but all the kid does is make plays.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think the Chargers need to, address the safety position behind Derwin. I'm a believer in Nasir Adderley. I think he's a solid starter, quality starter. But it's just unfortunate, right? Because Mark Webb, as soon as he started to play a little bit, he got hurt. As soon as we saw flashes from Alohi Gilman, he got hurt. So
Yeah.
that's another position where, I'm in favor of adding some competition, whether it be through free agency or the draft. I want to pivot to the Shrine Bowl. We were joking off air right beforehand about Utah, Oregon, and stuff like that. But a guy who I was really surprised didn't get a combine invite is Utah offensive tackle Bam Olaseni, a massive human being. What did you get to see from him in particular at the Shrine Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, on the hoof, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
This guy, what is he, like 6'7", just ridiculous arm length. I mean, he looks the part. It looks pretty. I actually got a chance to talk to an area scout from an NFC team. I'm not going to disclose the team, but he's a buddy of mine, and I just asked him, hey, like, why haven't I heard of this guy like until this past week?
Yeah.
I'm a Pac-12 football guy, and I didn't really hear about him. And Steven, you probably know more than I do, but from what he was telling me is he's from London, has barely played any football. I think he played 8 games this past year, and it wasn't really the full-time starter until later on in the year. I don't know if that's really accurate or not, but the messaging I got, he's just extremely, extremely green in everything.
Yeah.
He's just completely new to football. This is a real project, similar to Jordan Mailata at the Eagles,
Okay.
completely new to the sport. And so I think some of that rawness showed up on tape in 2021, where he's pretty and he looks the part, but the results weren't necessarily great. Additionally, I think he's 25 years old, 26 years old, so he's going to be really, really old as a rookie, which still obviously doesn't help him at all. So I think just the lack of him kind of being on the scene earlier, because one thing that people don't understand is combine voting takes place early January, late December.
Okay.
So for example, that was one of my roles at the Chargers was I would go log onto a portal that the NFL sends a link to, and then I would click yes or no to hundreds of players that the NFL has in the database, and debating on the Chargers' personal grade, I'd say yes or no. And so my assumption is, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, but the Utah tackle probably wasn't on the scene yet, and so when people are voting for the combine, just left him off, and I think he is a guy we do wish we could see at the combine, just because it's rare people have that size and stuff like that. But I also think he can go to the pro day, he can do the private workouts. We'll see if he gets drafted. I'd probably bet he doesn't get drafted. Honestly, based on what I saw at the Shrine Bowl, it wasn't great. Being honest with you, his reps weren't really good. He got beat quite a bit. They tried him at guard. Can't really anchor. At tackle, his technique's a mess. But I mean, at the end of the day, those physical tools are those physical tools, and it only takes one team to like him. But I would bet right now that he goes undrafted.
Man, you're bursting my bubble over here, Brentley. You're killing me. But yeah, I totally get it. We in the Utah circle are not expecting much from Bam this season. He is from London. He did do junior college. He actually grew up loving soccer like most people in London do. And then came over to the States to play football in high school. But they tried to start him in 2019. The first game they tried to start him at was at right tackle against Joe Tryon.
Oh boy.
And after 10 reps, it was all right, we got to get this guy out of here. He's not ready for this. So 2020 they started him, but they played 4 games. And then this past year, he didn't play in the first game, didn't play in the second game, and then started the rest of the year after that. So he's got 15, 16 games under his belt, really. But his size is his size, man. So like I said, I wouldn't expect him to be drafted super high. I could definitely see somebody taking a flyer on him for sure. Yeah. All right, let's talk about some players that did actually improve their draft stock. Give me 1 or 2 guys that you feel like is somebody that you walked away from Vegas thinking that, or maybe you had to go back and revisit the tape, somebody that really surprised you in their time in Las Vegas.
Yeah, there's a few names. I'd be remiss not to at least mention, obviously, Kyle Phillips is a guy I know me and you tweeted about. I mean, even in October, right? I vividly remember me having a back and forth on Twitter, because I tweeted out this dude's gonna go a lot higher than people think, and then now all of a sudden he was at the talk of the town in Vegas. And this is a guy I was around at UCLA. I was after I left the Chargers, I did a 7-month stretch at UCLA. before I realized I hated college recruiting. But but I did get to spend time with Kyle Phillips, and I saw the way he carried himself. I saw the way that his teammates like respected him, and then
Okay.
he was a redshirt freshman at the time, and it stuck with me because I'm like, this is a kid who's small, kind of undersized, who grew up in Southern California in San Marcos, so he knows all these UCLA 5-star kids, and he's like the dog of the program. And this is before he was even like the all Pac-12 player that he developed into. Like, this is just in practice and coming out of high school. Like,
Yeah.
his peers know he was that dude, and I was like, okay, like, we'll see. And then lo and behold, he has the career he has, and it's like, okay, yeah, like, sometimes the peers know, and
Yeah.
he, to me, is just the guy that I was by far the highest on during our TDN scouting process over the fall and into the winter. I gave him a second round grade, man. I gave him a second round grade, and I know predictively he's probably not going to go in the second round just because he doesn't have that size, and he's going to be penciled in as a slot only for a lot of teams. But I just feel so good about him as a player at the next level, who I know can come in day one, be a starting slot, catch 90 balls, be an excellent punt returner, and just be tough as nails and guy you out in your building. And like, he was literally, Steven, uncoverable at the Shrine Bowl. Like, I mean, he did not lose a rep in both team
Jeez.
and one-on-ones. I mean, it was ridiculous. Couldn't get a hand on him because he is so sudden. He is so shifty. He's so just quick off the line, through the stem, understands leverage, and then he's tough and strong. Like, you try to jam him,
Yeah.
you think he's undersized. Like, good luck, because he's stronger than you. Like, I don't think that he couldn't play outside. Like, I really do think he could do both. Do I wish he was a little more explosive? Is he going to be a run of 4.4? Probably not. Probably low 4.5s to mid 4.5s. But I bet his shuttle's really good. I bet his speed cone's outstanding because the dude can change direction. Really good with the ball in his hands. Can high point the football. I mean, to me, he has everything I look for in a receiver. And he's 5'11". He's not short. He's not like Braxton Berrios, who's barely 5'9".
Right.
Like, this dude has some size. So he's just a guy I think really helped himself in Vegas, and to me, just confirmed what I already knew. But for a bunch of new people, it kind of put him on the scene, if that makes sense. And it wasn't just the media people that was blowing him up. It was all the scouts, like, all my friends, all the people I was talking to in the stands. Like, yeah, like, this dude's the best player here in Vegas. So he's definitely a guy I would point to. Another guy who I wasn't really familiar with was Matthew Butler, the defensive tackle from Tennessee. He's probably the most consistent of the bunch on defense. He's a guy who's really, really good size. He's explosive. In terms of rushing the passer, he has a good first step, plays with length, really good power for his bull rush. Showed some hand usage to kind of do a dip and rip and swim move. Just really, 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 really disruptive in one-on-ones and in team. But I would say you could say that about a bunch of players who were at the Shrine Bowl in terms of who were disruptive in passing situations. Where Butler separated himself was in the running game, where he actually showed an ability to set the edge and hold the point of attack and two gap and do things like that. That was really impressive to me because, a guy like Thomas Booker from Stanford, who I really like, who's another one of those kind of interior pass rushers who's better upfield than really setting the edge in the running game, he was getting blown off the ball and washed on run plays because he doesn't have a firm anchor and he's kind of narrow, where Butler is wide-bodied and can really anchor against double teams and things like that. So I thought he's really separated himself, and I think he made some money. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go off in the third round.
Yeah, that's unfortunate about Booker. He was somebody that I was interested in seeing too. Somebody really disruptive at Stanford.
100%.
The Kyle Phillips thing though, it's really interesting to me. He of course has been slapped with like the Julian Edelman, Wes Welker comps, but I mean, he was a high 4-star recruit coming out of high school at UCLA, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, he's got legitimate athleticism chops, and I think just labeling him as like, oh, the stereotypical Patriot slot receiver kind
Yeah,
of thing
the
is
small
a
white
disservice to him.
receiver, like no, it's ridiculous. You know, and I hate to say it, but if the kid was black, like the narrative changes. Like
Yeah.
it's just a fact of it. You know, I mean, it's just being real. That's kind of that's the way it goes, and it's not right, but that's just the way media and really even scouts talk about it. You know, and like I compared him. So I did a scouting report for TDN, and I compared him to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Honestly,
Okay.
I think
I like
he
that one.
compares
Yeah.
very similarly athletically to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think Amon-Ra is probably a little more physical, just because I think he's a little denser, has more muscle mass than Kyle. But again, Kyle is strong. I think Kyle might be a little more sudden than Amon-Ra.
Okay.
But I think both are really good after the catch. Both are good at the catch point. Both can win in the slot. I know Amon-Ra does a little more outside. I think so can Kyle. I really do. And so that was my comparison. I think Amon-Ra went in the 4th round. He clearly outplayed that draft slot. I mean, I think anyone who really watched Amon-Ra should have had him at least a minimum in the 3rd round. I think TDN had him in the 2nd round. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see if Kyle goes to a situation similar to Amon-Ra where he can get some volume targets because maybe there isn't like a number 1 or number 2. There's no reason why Kyle can have a really successful rookie year.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him as well. I know my co-host Tyler is as well. I know that the tight end room or tight end group, if you will, heading into the Shrine Bowl was getting a lot of love, and I think it's been getting a lot of love at every All-Star game.
Yeah.
Anyone in terms of the tight end stand out to you in Vegas?
Yeah, man. I mean, Jelani Woods, the Virginia tight end, was a major standout. I think he's like 6'6", 260 pounds, can stretch the field, outstanding catch radius, give up the ball in his hands. This dude, like when he made plays in practice, like he definitely garnered the most like wows of the week at Vegas. I mean, he's a guy who I wasn't familiar with at all, but you saw him walking into the practice field, holy crap, who's this guy? And then you really got to see him run and catch balls in one-on-ones and in team situations. You just wanted to go do more homework on him because he looks the part, he moves well, and he was dominant, really. So I think he certainly helped himself. There was a few other names who I'm blanking on right now. There was a kid, trying to recall his name, but he was from Ohio, who was a quarterback. I think Armani Rogers was a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think he was a quarterback. He played at UNLV and then transferred over to Ohio to be a quarterback, but ended up switching to tight end. He looked pretty good at practice too. So he can be a project later in the rounds. He's a really good receiving tight end, athletic, has some radius, has some suddenness to him. I thought he looked good. The Oregon State kid, forget his name, but he had a really strong week as well. At practice, I recall. And same with the Pittsburgh kid. I think his name was something Kroll or something like that. But overall, I'd say that was by far the deepest group in Vegas. And I think arguably probably the deepest group in this entire draft class outside of corner. But I think tight ends, man, the Chargers need a tight end. So, I mean, because what's his name? Jared Cook ain't gonna cut it. I mean, I want him as far away from Herbert as possible. I want him shipped out of Orange County immediately. So I know tight end will be an area they look to address pretty early.
Yeah, I think that sentiment is shared by universally among Chargers fans on Twitter. Really quickly, the Oregon State tight end is Tegan Quitoriano.
Yep, he had a very strong week.
Yeah, okay. It's good to know. I'm excited to dive into the tight end class a little bit more. I'm a big fan of Dulcich from UCLA.
Yeah.
I like Jake Ferguson from Wisconsin a lot, but those are really the only two that I've had the chance to dive into so far. You mentioned the need.
I was going to say real quick, Stephen. Yeah, so the tight ends I've really seen it in the way TDN does their scouting process, which is pretty unique for media, is like we all don't just go down the line and try to scout all the top players. We split it up regionally. Okay. So me, as a part-time scout, I didn't have a region. I just kind of just pick and choose players from other people's region. But for example, Joe Marino, he had kind of the ACC and some SEC. Kyle had the Big Ten and some SEC. Keith had the Big 12 and some SEC, and then Dre Harris had the Pac-12 and some SEC. And I would just kind of go over the top. And so my exposure to this tight end class has really been limited, but based on the guys I've watched, I still would argue Jalen Weidermeyer from A&M is the best that I've seen.
Okay.
I know people have cooled on him for whatever reason, but I still think he's a player that can really help an offense. So he's a guy I definitely like.
Yeah, I think those players who are kind of like not first round locks, who are out early, kind of get pushed down the board sometimes because, like we see these guys at the Shrine Bowl, we see them at the Senior Bowl, like we've seen them more recently. So he's definitely someone that I'm curious to get into. I know I've heard a lot of good things there as well. We'll get you out of here on this one. You mentioned the need at cornerback. Your most recent mock draft, which I had some fun with doing a blind reaction there. You had the Chargers taking Trent McDuffie. What's your report on Trent McDuffie, and then kind of your general philosophy on how the Chargers should approach this draft, which is arguably the most important draft in franchise history?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a good statement considering you have this quarterback who y'all better not waste. He's
that dude.
And so, yeah, man, going to Trent. So I had the pleasure of scouting Trent during summer scouting for TDN last summer, and I gave him an astronomical grade. Like I gave him an extremely high grade. Yeah. And I was met with some skepticism because many people just think I'm a Pac-12 homer and stuff like that, which admittedly I am, but
that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it works out.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Justin Herbert.
It does. But no, man, McDuffie, he's just, first off, he's unreal athleticism. I mean, he's gonna jump vertically like 41 inches. So like he's super explosive, really springy, outstanding quickness to kind of mirror patterns and underneath and intermediate. I think that's one of the things I really look for in corners is when you have a receiver who does a quick slant or a speed out or a hitch, can you stop and click and close and maintain contact with the receiver? Yeah. And it's hard for some of these guys. Like Mike Davis, he can't do that. Like that is not Mike Davis's game because he's so long. He doesn't have the stop-start ability and the change of direction. McDuffie is borderline rare in that regard. So like he can just stick to these receivers who are quick and who can move with suddenness and do all kinds of fancy footwork in the stem. McDuffie can stay connected because he can mirror those patterns with that quickness and with that fluidity that I think is just special. And then when you combine that with his physicality, both throughout the stem as a tackler and run support, and then just the way he carries himself, he's like an alpha dog. And I think you got to have that in your corners. I just think he is a complete player. The only knocks I had on McDuffie was the lack of length. Okay. But at the same time, we're talking about a guy who's going to jump 41 inches, right. So it's like he'll be able to at least compete at the catch point down the field because he can go up vertically and really kind of compete at the catch point and things like that. And so I think McDuffie to me is a borderline can't miss player. That's kind of the train I've been on. Like at worst, you're getting an excellent starter, in my opinion. Is he going to be a Hall of Famer, perennial Pro Bowler, like potentially Derek Stingley or Andrew Booth? Might be. Maybe not. Maybe not. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
But I feel pretty damn good about McDuffie is not going to be a bust. Like I feel very confident in saying that. And so yeah, I mean, I gave him a super high grade. And now all of a sudden, I'm seeing I'm not the only one. Now all of a sudden, Jeremiah had him at number 12. Brugler had him at 12 yesterday or today. I'm well, this is funny. Like I mean, I had him as a top 15 player back in the summer. But it's got it does. It's nice being validated by two people that I respect in the media
Yeah.
at the very least.
Yeah.
But I do know the sentiment is felt in the league as well that McDuffie is certainly a top 20 player in this class, and if he were to fall to the Chargers, I do think that's like his sweet spot is pick 17. I think it's a home run selection. I mean, for my mock, I'm trying to think who else did I consider. Maybe a receiver at that spot. I didn't love any of the tackle options at that spot. Jordan Davis. I think corner's a bigger need than a nose tackle for me at that spot. Yeah, I think if the draft shook out like that, I think that's probably where I would go. Or I would go edge and just go off the wall and just draft an edge. I forget who I had available, but like just take an edge.
So there was Jameson was there. Both of the interior guys, Linderbaum, Kenyon Green, Chris Olave, Jordan Davis, Zion Johnson, Trayvon Walker, McDuffie's teammate, Kyler Gordon.
Trayvon Walker could have been interesting. Could have been interesting there. I'm a little iffy on Walker.
Yeah, his hype is going crazy right now.
Yeah, so I did him as well for TDN, and like I gave him, I think, an 84.5, which on our rank or scale is a very like it's like a low first, early second, but like how that shakes up on our board is like he'll clearly be like a top 20 player, like when we stack it. But yeah, man, I just don't know where you plan, and that's what I said is like. Last year, I think he played closer to 300. This year, he played closer to last year, I think he played like 280. This year, he played like 260. Played more edge this year. Last year, he's more interior. I personally think he's better inside than outside. Because while he's explosive, I don't think he's necessarily fluid and can really bend great to win with anything more than just speed or speed to power. Like, I don't see him really bending the edge, which for me, like as a pass rusher, I need to bend. That's why I think he could probably be better inside, just dominating dominating at 3-tech, just beating guards with quickness. But like, where do you slot that? You know, it's tough. Because the athletic traits and the size and the length, like. I love it because he is so explosive and he is so long, but it's like he's a bit of a tweener, you know. And,
I think him and DeMarvin Leal are very similar in that regard too.
It's funny, dude. I just finished DeMarvin Leal yesterday, and I did not grade him as high as I thought I would because I liked him a lot coming off of last year's tape. But this year, man, this dude cannot anchor against the run to save his life.
Jerry Tillery vibes for sure there.
Yeah, I bet. At least Leal is explosive. I don't think Tillery was that explosive. Leal does show some explosiveness to him, but it comes in spurts. I said in our meeting yesterday, which I was met with some skepticism a little bit. I think he's better at end than inside. I would probably play Leal outside and let him just try to win outside with some speed, with some power. Because inside, I think he's a liability. I think he's really a one-down player because you cannot trust that man early in downs because I'm running right at him, you know? And so I think I gave him a second-round grade, like a mid-second-round grade. At least with Walker, he is better against the run than Leal. But now going back to the corner, to the pick and McDuffie, I think at the end of the day, getting a player like that in the Chargers defense, allowing and one, you can never have too many corners, man. You know, as a Chargers fan, like that position group gets decimated year in and year out, and you have practice squad players seeing significant snaps.
This year was brutal.
In the AFC West, going against Tyreek Hill, like you need guys. You absolutely need guys. And knowing Telesco and knowing his philosophy of coverage over pass rush, like they're drafting another corner, whether that's in the first, second, or third. Put that in pen. They're taking corner, like they are. And McDuffie in the first to me is a home run.
Yeah, I'm of the belief right now. I think it's the best corner or the best edge rusher at 17 I have always believed you invest first round picks in premium positions, and this year, like Chris Harris is a free agent, and I do not expect him to be back. Like Tavon Campbell right now would be your starting slot corner, which would just be a freaking disaster. I mean, I think he's a fine fifth corner depth player, but I think if there's anything to go back to like the Buffalo Bills game and Buffalo Bills and Chiefs game, is that if you're going to keep up with the AFC West and AFC in general, like you need like 4 or 5 corners to, be able to at least slow them down, because, we saw how important not having Tre'Davious White was for the Buffalo Bills this year. And you can point to, the Bengals losing to the Rams because Eli Apple is probably your best corner. So I'm in favor of, stocking up on corners, pass rushers, and everyone's always like, well, you have Asante, you have Joey and Uchenna, and it's like you need like 3 or 4 pass rushers. You need 4 or 5 corners in today's NFL, I think, to kind of counteract what is happening with all the offense around the league.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. And like, I'll end on this, and maybe this is probably a topic for another day, Steve, and I'll come on again in a couple of weeks. But like, the Chargers have a lot of holes, man. Like,
They do.
and they get talked about roster wise as one of the better rosters in the league, and I just can't get there. Because I think if they were, they're not missing the playoffs with a quarterback who played so well. I think Herbert is really lifting up this roster and making this team better. It's not the other way around. And I think that narrative is completely wrong, where it's like, oh, well, Herbert was drafted to a good team, and that's why he's so good. No, man. Like, this team has some holes. Like, outside of Joey, who's the other edge rusher? I love Chenna, but I think he's best more as your third guy. Interior, you have Lindsay.
Everybody's a free agent, man.
You have Linval.
Hillary and Fehoko.
Yeah, like, okay, so exactly at linebacker, I know the team loves Kaiser and they love Drew Tranquill, but like, I mean, Kaiser arguably played at a Pro Bowl level. Tranquill when he's in the lineup played well too, but I don't know about that. Kenneth Murray looks like a whiff. We'll see if he can learn this defense a little better. The secondary, as I mentioned, like outside of Derwin and Asante, he was hurt for a lot of the year.
Yeah,
I don't love anybody, and then offensively, tight end, you had no one. Like offensive line on the right side, disaster. Like there's a lot of areas for improvement, and it just kind of goes to show you, like, and look, I love Joe Burrow. Like, I'm not gonna say one bad word ever about Joe Burrow, and he's getting a lot of credit for elevating the Bengals to the Super Bowl, which I think he did to an extent. But people don't talk about what Herbert is doing, elevating this Chargers team to where it was last year. Like, they are winning because of Herbert, not Herbert winning because of the team. That's my opinion. Like, I think there's a lot this phrase that this front office needs to do in order to really build around this quarterback, because I just think that there's so many holes. I can make an argument for 6 positions in the first round that you could at least accept, and that to me is a red flag. And so I think they need to be aggressive in free agency, aggressive in the draft, whether that's trading down and acquiring more picks in the second round, because that's where this draft is money. Like, second round, early third round, you can get some starters. So I wouldn't even hate that. So we'll see. But as you mentioned, this is a huge offseason for this team. And they got to get it right.
Now, I'm of the belief that the 1 through 10 on the Chargers, I'll put up against anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's the problem is the 11 through the 53, where, I mean, you have some solid players here and there, right? Like I mentioned Adderley, I think he's a solid starter. We'll see what they do with Kaiser White. I would love to have him back. I think he's a solid starter. Sante, solid starter. But, you're missing the guys like the Greg Gaines of the world, the Ashawn Robinson, the Von Bell that the Bengals have, and the Sam Hubbard. So, I think this is an opportunity. The Chargers certainly have the resources to, fix that problem this year. They have 11 draft picks. You mentioned a trade down scenario. And, we haven't really seen Tom do that very much, but if they can, I know who was it today? I think it might have been Todd McShay had them trading down with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Steelers could move up and get Malik Willis. So if that happens this year, fantastic, because I think the Chargers do have a lot of needs. And like you said, whether it's right tackle, Kenyon Green, I think would be a fantastic pick at right guard, corner, edge rusher, receiver. Frankly, I'm cool with anything except for nose tackle. Please do not draft a nose tackle with a first round pick. That would just be a disaster. But anything else, man, I'm cool with.
I totally agree, man. Totally agree.
Well, Brentley, man, this has been awesome. Can't thank you enough for joining me today. What do you have coming up at the Draft Network, and where can Chargers fans find that work?
Yeah, man. I mean, just putting out content every week right now. We are currently going through cross checks, so I'm finally able to get my eyes on the players who I wasn't able to study during regional scouting, as I mentioned. So just going from the top down, all the top guys all the way down. So as I mentioned, watched Leal yesterday and Booth, Linderbaum, and Kenyon Green today, and it's been good. So I'll be tweeting a lot at Brentley12, Brentley 12. My thoughts on some of those top players. My latest mock draft came out on Sunday on Super Bowl during halftime. So check that out at the Draft Network. But again, man, yeah, I mean, it's the best time of the year. It's draft season. A bunch of content's going to be put out, and yeah, man, it's gonna be good.
Yes, Charge fans, I cannot recommend following Brentley enough, because he is more plugged in, as you can tell from this video, more plugged in with the Chargers' needs and kind of that evaluation than anyone really on Draft Twitter. So really excited to kind of see that content coming out. And Brentley, again, thanks for joining me today.
Man, always a pleasure, Steven.